is 8:32. I am going to call to order the Finance and Fiscal Resources Committee meeting of Tuesday, May 19th at 8:30 a.m. Wayman, can you please start with the notice?
Yes, I will. Pursuant to Governor Whitmer's Executive Order 2020-75, the Finance and Fiscal Resources Committee of the Kent County Board of Commissioners, in order to protect the public health, will conduct its meeting via electronic communications. Any member of the public wishing to listen to the proceedings or provide public comment may do so by using the following internet connection or phone numbers and passcode, which is shown on the video screen as well. It was mailed or posted. You can also provide public comment through public comment at kentcountymi.gov. Anyone disrupting the meeting by using offensive language or actions that are offensive will be removed or muted from the meeting. Thank you.
Hey, Wayman, you still sound like you're a little far from the mic. I don't know if you can get closer or you can work on that sound just a bit. You just sound a little distant.
Okay.
All right, so with that, let's open up public comment.
Good morning. Hi, my name is Courtney Myers-Keaton, and I'm the coordinator for our local Continuum of Care for Homelessness, also known as the COC, or Grand Rapids Area Coalition to End Homelessness. First, I would like to say thank you to the commissioners who are part of the COVID Relief Subcommittee for the opportunity to speak last week about the financial impacts of COVID-19 for providers working with families experiencing homelessness and the needs we expect to arise over the forthcoming months. Secondly, as ESG funding is on the agenda for today, the COC feels it is important to the members of our community who are experiencing homelessness for local governmental and service agencies to coordinate the various sources of funding and ESG allocations. This will ensure that key components of the system, such as prevention, street outreach, shelter, and permanent housing, are adequately funded, and that there aren't any unintentional gaps that may result from a lack of coordination. We welcome the opportunity and thank you for your consideration.
Okay, thank you. Do we have any other public comments? Wayman, anything come in?
Nothing, no more on chat or through email. We have nothing.
We'll give it a little bit longer because it is all
Yes.
electronic. Anything else, Wayman?
Nothing on chat or through email.
All right, let's go ahead and move on to the consent agenda. Is there a motion to approve the consent agenda?
So moved, Antor.
Support from Wooden.
I believe the motion was by Antor.
Wooden supported.
All right. Moved by Antor, supported by Commissioner Wooden. Questions, comments, or discussion on the consent agenda? All right, we don't have anything, Wayman, on.
No comments, no questions.
All right, let's take a roll call vote on the consent agenda, please, Pam.
Commissioner Antor.
Yes.
Commissioner Breivy.
Yes.
Bukowski.
Yes.
Morgan.
Yes.
Sparks.
Yes.
Voorhees.
Yes.
Womack.
Yes.
Wooden.
Yes.
Chair Jones.
Yes. The consent agenda passes. That will bring us on to item 3 from the Administrator's Office and Fiscal Services. Wayman?
Yes, this is a request to the Board of Commissioners to approve the following list of guidelines to be used in preparation of the 2021 county budget. The The county administrator controller is directed to present a general fund budget for the 2020-21 fiscal year that is structurally balanced and to establish the appropriate budget targets to achieve the goals laid out in the board's strategic plan. Unless properly justified, no growth budgets will be used for contractual services and commodities, with the exception of departmental budgets that receive state or federal funding or contractual services that change based upon external causes and not internal spending controls. Zero-based budgeting will be utilized for all line items so that each department should assume that the count rolls back to zero at year end, and they will need to rebuild the rationale for all expenditures within that line item. The specific accounts affected include, but are not limited to, consultants, travel regular and travel conference, other contractual services, training and education, and dues and memberships. There will be a moratorium on new positions requiring the use and or appropriation of additional general fund resources, and a formal position review process followed for departments wishing to fill positions. According to the capital improvement program policy, a minimum of 0.20 mils of the general property tax levy will be set aside for capital improvements for the 2021 budget. This action item is not an activity related to COVID-19.
Morgan to adopt.
Previous support.
Okay, moved and supported. Wayman, the question that I have is it's proposed to go to the board without a specific date. Can you elaborate on that?
This will go to the board as determined as we move through the budget process. We have a calendar that's listed, Madam Chair, on the back, budget outline, preliminary. Again, it will be based on the board chairs and the board's finalization of that date.
But does this action request actually go to the board?
Yes, it will.
But we don't know when.
It will be incorporated within the within the total general fund budget when that comes through. It will be incorporated within that budget, Madam Chair.
All right. Any other questions or comments on this? Dave Bukowski, Commissioner Bukowski, you have your hand up.
I do. Thank you, Chair. Sorry for my delay in getting here. The commute was terrible. And I guess that last bullet point is technically correct. This action item is not an activity related to COVID-19. However, at least in these times, the impact, and I guess, do I save my questions for item number 10 when we look at our current finances and the projection of our finances?
Well, it depends what your question is, Commissioner Bukowski.
Say that?
What's your question?
My question is, how are we planning for, 2021 with the current unknowns related to revenue and all of that? Do you believe that's adequately covered in these guidelines, Wayman?
Yes, I do. We will incorporate all of the current conditions, all of the known impacts of COVID-19, all the known revenue streams, whether it be revenue sharing and or property tax revenues, as we plan out the budget for this coming year. So it will all be taken into consideration. However, the last bullet is related to whether or not expenditures are going to be expense or dollars expense as a result of COVID-19 in this particular action item. And that is not what this request is doing. We added that item so it was clear for every action request during COVID-19 to make sure that everyone knows whether or not this has to do with a COVID-19 related expense. That's why that last bullet is there, Commissioner.
And Commissioner Bukowski, that was done at my request. Whether or not an action item is related to COVID-19 or not, just to make things perfectly clear. So this is something you'd be looking at with or without COVID-19.
All right, thank you.
Anyone else?
No hands? Nothing in chat?
All right, let's go ahead and take a roll call vote. Pam?
Okay. Commissioner Antor,
Yes.
Breivy,
Yes.
Bulkowski,
Yes.
Morgan,
Yes.
Sparks,
Yes.
Voorhees,
Yes.
Womack,
Yes.
Wooden,
Yes.
Chair Jones.
Yes. That brings us to item 4 from Kent County Community Action. Wayman?
Yes, this is a request to the Board of Commissioners to approve the amendment to the Housing and Community Development Consolidated Plan for July 1, 2016 through June 30, 2021. Five-year consolidated plan consists of a housing and homelessness needs assessment, market analysis, and related goals and objectives, and is a prerequisite of HUD for obtaining community development block grant, home investment partnership, and emergency solutions grants from HUD. An amendment to the five-year consolidated plan is necessary to allow a change in use of funding to expand public services and to respond to the coronavirus emergency. Kent County has worked to identify current needs of its residents facing previously unforeseen needs as a result of COVID-19 crisis. Primary concern is the loss of income of Kent County residents and the resulting increase in demand for housing assistance. Expanded public services activities will allow the CDBG programming to include emergency payments to individuals or families for the purposes of preventing shut-off of services or rent, mortgage payments for the purpose of preventing homelessness, services to address health needs of residents, legal services and counseling to provide legal aid to low and moderate income persons. The addition of economic development activities will allow CDBG programming to be expanded to include technical and direct assistance to for-profit businesses, including micro enterprise assistance for small and micro businesses impacted by COVID-19 in the form of loans or grants to provide operating capital to enable the creation or retention of jobs. The addition of emergency shelter activities will allow the ESG programming to be expanded to address essential services for families and individuals needing shelter, including hotel or motel vouchers when appropriate emergency shelter space is not available. This action is an activity related to COVID-19.
Okay, is there a motion to approve?
Moved by Wooden. Sorry.
Go ahead, Wooden. You go.
Moved by Wooden.
Supported by Sparks.
Okay, moved and supported, and we'll take questions, comments, and discussion. Commissioner Wooden?
Brady, and then Morgan.
And all right, so who do you see first, Wayman?
Breedy.
All right, Commissioner Breivy, go ahead.
Thank you, Chair Jones. I have a question about the ESG money, and I'd like some specifics, dollar amounts, a breakdown of how the ESG money is being spent. Is there someone on the call that can answer that?
I believe Susan Cervantes is on the call. She's the director of the Community Action Agency for the county.
Hi, good morning. The breakdown is that the administration is going to be 53,230. The homeless prevention, which is for rental assistance, eviction services, security deposit, and first month's rent, that's going to be $300,000. And then hotel motel vouchers are going to be $179,073.
What was the first item that you mentioned, Susan?
Administration, that's for our operations to run the program.
Okay. Thanks.
Yeah, Wayman, just take a minute and go over the amounts we're talking here. It really didn't have that in the action request, but it is in the packet for the follow-up.
Yes. So we have $1 million in CDBG funding. We have $532,000 in ESG funding. We have $1.6 million in CSBG funding. And again, I think staff talked about the dollars that are allocated for administration within these line items. So Susan, do you have any more there to add?
I don't for the ESG. Was there another question other than the totals that are in the memo?
I believe I covered those, but Madam Chair, if there are other questions, we'll take
Why
them.
don't we spend just a minute and talk about the administration amount? You have 53,000 for the ESG. There's 200,000 on the CDBG, and then another 250,000 for the CSBG. Can we just get a little more details on where that's going?
Sure, that's our operations funds, and that will help pay for our staff cost, occupancy, communication, postage, all of our cost allocations, travel, mileage, those types of cost. We really were very frugal in developing those budgets. Most of the money that you see is going out to the community, and we just need to have some of it to pay for our operations.
And all of it is within the guidelines of HUD, correct?
And
Susan?
it's within the guidelines of HUD, and it's in the guidelines of OCS, which is the Office of Community Services, which is where we get our CSBG dollars.
And, what from a percentage standpoint, I don't know what that total is, but I don't know, Susan, if you could communicate what that might
Well, the
be.
totals for the CDBG are 20% of the grant, and some of that money is going to pass through us to any
Yes.
to any of the sub-recipients that we do for the small business loans. For the ESG grant, that's 10% of the grant. And, what we'll be doing with that is doing the intake for the customers. We'll be doing inspections of the housing units because they have to meet housing quality standards. We'll be doing their case management, and then just the reporting. And then for CSBG, which is the Community Services Block Grant, the administration is about 16%. And that's allowable for operations.
Yeah, I think important point that needs to be noted here is these dollars are not just for county staff, but these are dollars that will be, like she says, will pass through dollars that would go to agencies that are also involved in managing these services.
Okay, Wayman, who else do you have online for questions?
Morgan.
Okay, Commissioner Morgan.
Yes, thanks. Hey, I really like the idea of staff going, aggressively after these grants. So congratulations to them. But I have a new definition in here. It's a micro business. Can somebody tell me what in the world a micro business is, and how is that different from a small business?
Was it?
The micro business doesn't differ from the small business very much, but it's a term that HUD uses, and so it's a term that we have started to use.
So micro meaning less than 5, more than 10. I guess I don't. Yeah, it's just another terminology term.
I can get you their formal definition.
Okay, thanks.
Commissioner Wooden.
All right, Commissioner Wooden.
Thank you, Madam Chair. I have a number of questions. First, regarding the administration question, I'm looking back at our approved budget from last year. If I'm correct, we don't necessarily put any local tax revenue, general fund revenue into the administration of KCCA or the Community Development Fund. If I'm looking at the budget from last year, almost all of it's coming from the federal or state dollars that we receive. Is that correct?
That is correct.
And then my other questions, and I'll admit they pertain to almost the package, so to speak, of the different resolutions that we're acting on. But since they all tie together, I might ask them in this moment. Could you speak a little bit about coordination with both the City of Wyoming, the City of Grand Rapids, the Continuum of Care, so that what steps have been taken already, what steps will be taken to ensure that we're not duplicating services and that we aren't creating service gaps within the dollars that we have received from through the CARES Act.
Right. And with the CDBG dollars, that's quite easy to tell you that we cannot duplicate, because the CDBG dollars are received by both the City of Wyoming and the City of Grand Rapids. And so we are not allowed to do business in those areas for CDBG. And so our services are going to look more out county when we're talking about helping small businesses, and when we're talking about any of the homeless prevention activities, or even the grants for people.
Mm-hmm.
And so for CDBG, it's quite easy. We will not be duplicating services, although we will coordinate our services with the city and with the City of Wyoming and the City of Grand Rapids, in that we will look to each other to complete the consolidated plan amendments and to address issues that are countywide in a group effort. As far as the ESG dollars go, the ESG dollars are for the homeless prevention, and the homeless prevention and the hotel motel vouchers can only be addressed with residents who are out county and in the City of Wyoming. And so if someone lives in the City of Grand Rapids, they are not eligible for our ESG dollars. The City of Grand Rapids got their own ESG dollars, and they're in the process of deciding what to do with their ESG dollars. I sit on the steering council of the COC, and so I'm at those meetings, and we coordinate with the COC what we believe that we need to do as a community. We did put in the hotel motel vouchers due to the COVID de-intensification of the, so that the virus would not spread. And so, and then with the homeless prevention, we really feel as if the people that we can help the most are going to be those who have housing but may not be able to pay their rent right now. And so we want to be able to keep them housed should they come to us and be eligible for that. They would have to live out county or the City of Wyoming. And then the CSBG dollars are our funds that we get as a community action. We can use those countywide. And so anybody is eligible for those funds, and we will work with the Salvation Army and other entities. The Salvation Army is the HARA, which is the housing assistance, where people would go first. And then we'll get the referrals from them and be able to work together so that the services aren't duplicated. We did not put caps on the services right now because we would like to be able to make a large impact on the household that comes in, help them get out of their situation and to move on.
Thank you. If anything, with a comment on the coordination, certainly I understand that the dollars that we receive can't be spent in the other jurisdictions that receive money, but we could also avoid, and you spoke to this yourself, but we could avoid creating gaps in services by ensuring that we're not straying or they're not straying too far away from each other in terms of the kinds of services we're using these dollars for, so that whether you live in Wyoming or Grand Rapids, Kentwood, Cedar Springs, or out county, or across this county, if you're facing an issue, you can get served. And which leads to some of my next questions. If I'm reading correctly, in the memo you provided as the attachment, we are receiving about $500,000 or $500,000 of the $1 million that we're receiving in CDBG through the CARES Act is going to small business relief. And in addition, I also saw that we are reappropriating, or through a recalculation of our accounting, roughly $689,000 as well towards small business relief. Are those two funds that are coming together for a little over $1 million for small business relief, or is it are some of those funds the same?
Well, the 600,000, those were monies that we had on hand that, because of accounting, we have diligently worked for the past 2 or 3 years to get those monies in order. Now that we're using the system that's called the IDIS. And so we came up with the reconciled number and want to spend those dollars on the assistance with the COVID with the small businesses. So they will be a combined fund, but they are all CDBG dollars.
Yeah. So in total, it's about a 1.1 million amount for small businesses, correct?
Yes. Mm-hmm.
So, which leads to my last questions. I'm looking, CDBG themselves can also be used for 3-month short-term rental assistance. And I have to imagine that there's going to be the needs that we have even outside of, even within the boundaries of our jurisdiction are going to be potentially greater than the 500,000 that we have in ESG. Was there a reason why we chose the small business fund, or why we chose to use these for small business assistance and not the short-term rental? Not that I oppose the idea, I just am wondering how we're prioritizing these, and just making sure, we had, or the COVID subcommittee received a report that showed how much across the county, including Grand Rapids and Wyoming, the funds that they're going to need to help stave this crisis, and they based them on previous numbers from the Great Recession. I'm just wondering what led to our decision to not use CDBG funds for short-term rental instead of and decided instead to go with small business relief.
Right. Well, currently we have about $1 million out with home funds to use for short-term rentals, and we're also putting we have waivers during the COVID crisis, and we have about 1.2 million that's going out in the home funds, and then the 200 then there's going to be about another $1 million that's going out. So there's money out there for the short-term rental assistance programs, and those are run with subrecipients with Community Rebuilders and Salvation Army.
Great. Would it be possible to get a summary of everything we're putting into short-term rental and well as hotel motel vouchers and those that we appropriated pre-COVID? Because if I'm remembering correctly, the home dollars were probably appropriated pre-crisis, where the other dollars that we're dealing with today are post-COVID dollars. Would it be possible to get a summary of what we've appropriated before this crisis and what we're appropriating after in terms of short-term rental and de-intensification of shelter? And then my last question, could you speak a little bit more about the application and the process that you're going to go about dispersing these funds to small businesses? What's the eligibility criteria? I see in the resolution that it includes supporting of micro businesses for employee creation and retention, but that suggests that it's not exclusive of that kind of work. Can you speak a little bit more about eligibility criteria and how much employee retention and employee creation is going to be involved with handing out these dollars?
I think that the eligibility criteria is being established by HUD, and we don't have all of our guidelines yet for the eligibility, but we are going to concentrate on businesses that are already established that really took the hit with the COVID crisis, and then to provide technical assistance so that they may get back on their feet, be stronger coming out of the crisis, and then looking at developing businesses. And so I think the eligibility criteria is we're in the stages of developing the criteria for that. I do know that it will take place out county, and so that's a good thing too, because when the applications were put in for help with the small businesses, it's my understanding that 2,300 businesses applied and 40 were awarded grants through the right place and things. And so I think that there's a huge need out there, and that is one of the parameters that we looked at and said, you know what, we can help because of these funds that we are receiving.
Yeah, great. I mainly asked the question because, as we've been talking about through this whole process, not wanting to create gaps in services, and that's why we have the COVID subcommittee. That's why we're trying to figure out what dollars should be put to what uses should use Treasury dollars, what should get CPG, what should get ESG, et cetera. And so I'm glad to hear more about that. Could you provide a little, just my last question, and I swear I'm done. Could you provide a little more detail what technical assistance is going to be? Is this more of those the providing of PPE for businesses? What kind of, could you speak a little bit more about technical assistance?
Well, the technical assistance we're going to provide through a sub-recipient contract, and they're going to help them establish budgets, training for the employees, workplace safety, just anything that they need that would be relevant to getting them back up. And so we've developed a list of possible training topics that we're going to search for through the subrecipient, and be able to provide perhaps training for certifications for OSHA, for MyOSHA, those types of trainings.
I apologize. I may have lied when I said this was my last question. Who's the subrecipient that we're contracting out with?
Well, we have to go out for an RFP for that.
Perfect.
That hasn't been established yet.
Perfect. Now I withdraw. Now I am done. Thank you very much.
Okay, can we take a minute, and for those who are not speaking, please put your phones on mute. There's still a lot of background noise. So if we could just take a moment, and if you're on the call, please mute if you haven't done so. And with that, next up for questions,
Commissioner
Womack.
Womack. Yes.
Good morning, Mrs. Cervantes. Good morning.
Good morning.
Yes, I had a lot of questions, but Commissioner Wooden asked most of those, especially with the technical support for the small businesses. How many small businesses have applied, or have you identified with needing this small business aid and relief?
Well, currently the funds are not available, so we have not been able to go out for RFP yet. We don't have the certifications from HUD yet, so we don't have any that have applied yet.
How have they decided what technical support would be needed for these small business? I know you mentioned OSHA and some of the safety requirements from OSHA. But when it comes to the micro businesses, and looking at the support that they do get and the things that they learn from the Kent County other departments, including the health department, I'm trying to see how the OSHA will play a part in the micro business, and what other technical support have you identified that these businesses need, and how do we do that without being able to already identify these businesses and get feedback from them on what their needs are?
Right, and we are going to address each company uniquely. And so the identification of the technical assistance that we've identified has been through research and just through talking to people about what they might need, talking to other companies that provide some business solutions. We spoke to Jacob Moss, who is the executive director of Michigan Works, as an expert in business solutions. And so, we're researching as we go. We are researching every step of the way.
How will some of the small businesses and micro businesses in the business that I do, I'm in contact with, my survival depends on being in contact with anywhere from 100 to 200 businesses a year. And when we talk about the micro businesses, when I'm dealing with a lot of the owners of small businesses, there's just so much support that they're unaware of. Most of them have never received any benefits. They received their taxes. They received their request to pay their taxes. But otherwise, when it comes to government agencies, the majority of them have seemed to say they've never been helped. How will they know about this program?
Well, we plan on advertising this program heavily. We'll work through the local units of government. We'll work through the Chamber of Commerce in the areas in which we can provide this service. And we'll work with the subrecipient who will know about the businesses in the areas also.
Have you ever worked with any street team or did anything with any mass mailings to some of the small businesses in the area?
I'm sorry, I didn't hear the first part of your question, but as for the mass mailings, we will be doing those once we can set up the program and have expenditures to the program.
Okay, that would be great. Also, my last question, and this will be my last question. And thank you, Mrs. Cervantes. You've been hit by a lot of questions. You're doing a great job this morning.
Thank you.
My last question is, with 4907, 49508, with these being the hardest hit by COVID-19 when it comes to those testing positive, can you give me a brief, because I know that the city's having some of this funding, the ESG funding, the CBDG grants. There's going to be some things that you cannot duplicate in that area, but could you give me some of the services that will be available through the CARES Act money that's coming through Kent Community Action? What are some of the services you will be able to do for the 49507 and 49508 zip codes?
Well, the services that we can provide countywide are with the Community Services Block Grant or CSBG funding. We will have utility assistance, homeless prevention. We're also going to have a special needs response fund set up, which is if someone needs help with burials, anything related to COVID that might have come up for them because of COVID. And then we're going to put together a small personal products pantry so that if people need toothpaste, cleaning supplies, whatever they might need, we are going to put together a pantry for them to be able to select some goods out of.
Thank you very, very much.
Thank you.
Okay, Commissioner Sparks is up next. Commissioner Sparks?
Yes, I'm here. Can you hear me?
Yes, go ahead with your question.
Oh, okay. Thank you so much, Madam Chair. I think that we just need to really make sure that we remember that businesses, I mean, there are 30.7 million businesses, small businesses that make up, 1.5 million jobs annually. So when we're looking at business, I appreciate the fact that you are thinking about the small businesses, because they create, 64% of the new jobs. And when you're talking about the micro enterprise, replace the word enterprise with business. So it's a business that has 5 or fewer employees, and one of the employees happens to be the owner. So that just addresses Commissioner Morgan's question about the micro enterprise. So thank you, Susan, for your work on that. I really appreciate it.
Thank you. You're welcome.
Okay, Wayman, do we have anyone else?
Commissioner Antor.
Commissioner Antor, go ahead.
Thank you, Madam Chair. I was just curious, Susan, if you could tell me when people are testing positive at any of our homeless centers for the COVID-19, are they staying at the centers and they're displacing other residents, or how does that work?
Well, currently there's, and maybe Wayman can address this better, but there's a quarantine center and then there's an isolation center. So there are, the guiding light is split into 2 entities. And then the Catholic Central High School was open for families with children who cannot isolate anywhere. And then the county is leasing the Fulton Manor, which is across the street from the Salvation Army, and they are providing shelter there. So in order to de-intensify the spread of the virus, there are separating shelters.
Okay, so no one's ending up back out on the streets at all, like at any of the missions. If we, I had heard that someplace that maybe some people are going to end up back on the street.
No, and if they are back on the street, it would be their choice. But
Okay.
no, the system has been put through and very diligently and consistently. The homeless shelters have worked together to de-intensify the spread of the COVID and to ensure the safety of those who can't ensure and stay at home in place.
Yeah, Commissioner Antor, the cooperation has been phenomenal. We've had a couple of incidences where individuals attempted to leave the shelter and were counseled and coached, and we were successful in ensuring that they did not until they were out of the quarantine state. So hats off to the health department and our emergency management teams that have been working to ensure the opposite of what maybe you've heard has occurred. So we're very, very thankful for the way that they've handled things.
Thank you, Wayman. Susan, thank you very much for all the information this morning. Great job.
Thank you.
All right, do we have any other questions, Wayman?
None on chat, none, no hands raised.
Hey, Pam, would you please take a roll call vote?
Yeah. Commissioner Antor,
Yes.
Breivy,
Yes.
Volkowski,
Yes.
Morgan,
Yes.
Sparks,
Yes.
Voorhees. Commissioner Voorhees? Commissioner Voorhees?
Yes, excuse me.
Womack?
Yes.
Wooden?
Yes.
And Chair Jones?
Yes.
That
That
motion
motion
passes.
Passes. Thank you. We will go on to item number 5, also from Kent County Community Action. Wayman, would you please go over the action request?
Sure, yes, this is a request of the Board of Commissioners to approve the amended Kent County Community Development Annual Action Plan for July 1, 2019 through June 30th, 2020. The grant application referred to as the Annual Action Plan contains a description and budget for CDBG, home, ESG funded activities proposed to be undertaken between July 1, 2019 and June 30th, 2020, including CDBG projects requested by local units of government. An amendment of this AAP is annual action plan is a HUD prerequisite to allow change in use of funding to expand public services and add economic development and emergency shelter programs to respond to the coronavirus emergency. Expanded public services activities will allow the CDBG programming to include emergency payments to individuals or families for the purposes of preventing shut-off of services or rent mortgage payments for the purpose of preventing homelessness, service to address health needs of residents, legal services and counseling to provide legal aid to low and moderate income persons. The addition of economic development activities will allow CDBG programming to be expanded to include technical and direct assistance for-profit businesses, including micro-enterprise assistance for small and micro businesses impacted by COVID-19 in the forms of loans or grants to provide operating capital to enable the creation of retention of jobs. The addition of emergency shelter activities will allow ESG programming to be expanded to address essential services for families and individuals needing shelter, including hotel or motel vouchers, when appropriate emergency shelter space is not available. The action item is an activity related to COVID-19.
Is there a motion to approve?
So moved by Antor.
And support? Anybody?
Support by Prevey.
Okay, thank you. Moved by Commissioner Antor, supported by Commissioner Brevy. We will now take questions and comments.
Seeing none, Madam Chair.
Let's give it another minute.
We have one.
There we go. Who do we have?
Commissioner Womack.
All right, Commissioner Womack.
Yes, I just have a comment, and it's not specifically just to Kent Community Action, but just the entire all of those that are going to be on board with helping with the COVID relief. We're all going to have to be just more intentional to reaching not only minority businesses, but I just believe countywide that we have small businesses, and I believe small business owners, especially during struggling times, are so busy both keeping the lights on in their business and in their home that some of our usual ways of contacting them, letting them know this help is out there, that we just have to be more intentional of making sure that we get this information out there. And as commissioners, our constituents a year from now are really going to be asking us, what help went into the county, and we're definitely putting those funds out there. But we're gonna need help making sure people know that it's out there, so that they can get the help that they need. Because the way things have been going, I've seen a lot of great outreach. So it's no fault of the county departments. And like I said, our partners are people who are with the city, their organizations, like DDA, we got the Chamber, we got Experience GR, we got all of these great groups that are doing a great job of getting information out there. But with the COVID-19, I think we're gonna have to be even more intentional getting that information, that there's help available and we are here to help this county. Thank you.
Hey, Commissioner Bukowski.
Thank you, Chair. My quick request is that these 5 action items that are going to be to the board next week, and I know everybody's really busy and all that, but do you have like a quick flow chart for, I think it would forestall a lot of questions next week, Thursday, especially from commissioners who aren't able to be part of this meeting and get all the details, like how it, we amend the 5-year plan, then we got to amend the annual plan, and then we have to appropriate the individual dollars, and then we have some new money. Just how these 5 things work together, because it just took a couple read-throughs last night to really understand it. So just a quick flow chart. not a lot of details. Does that make sense?
We'll see what we can do for you, Commissioner. Yes.
All right, anyone else, Wayman?
No, Madam Chair.
All right, let's take a roll call vote, please, Pam.
Commissioner Antor,
Yes.
Breivy,
Yes.
Bukowski,
Yes.
Morgan,
Yes.
Sparks,
Yes.
Voorhees,
Yes.
Womack,
Yes.
Wooden,
Yes.
and Chair Jones.
Yes.
That motion passes.
Thank you. Let's go on to item number 6. Also from Kent County Community Action. Wayman, would you please go over the action request?
Sure. This is a request of the Board of Commissioners to appropriate $689,000 from additional program income in 2020-21 Community Development Block Grant CDBG budget. As a nationwide database, the Integrated Disbursement of Information Systems provides the U.S. Department of Housing and Urban Development with current information regarding the program activities underway across the nation, including funding data. HUD has updated IDS to phase out the first in, first out accounting methodology. These changes to IDS ensure that funds are both committed and dispersed in IDS on grant-specific basis instead of using the FIFO oldest money dispersed first method that has been used for CDBG program to date. The change in methodology described above within IDS enabled grant-specific accounting to begin fiscal year 2015 formula allocations. With this change, IDS will specifically tie activity, funding, commitment, and draws to specific grants in IDS. Funds from pre-2015 grants will continue to be committed and dispersed using the FIFO method. Kent County Community Action has reviewed the revenue and grant budgets in our accounting system and have compared the amounts to IDS utilized by HUD, and it has identified a need to appropriate $689,000 to the KCCA CDBG program. These funds are reflected in the 2019 amended HUD action plan and will be used for small business grants, technical assistance for the relief from the COVID-19 pandemic. This action item is an activity related to COVID-19.
Thank you. Is there a motion to approve?
Moved by Bulkowski.
Support by
Support by
Breivy.
Wood.
All right, we'll go with support by Breivy. Thank you, Commissioner Bulkowski, for moving it. We'll take questions, comments, and discussion.
No hands, no questions, comments.
Can we just hit one? I've got one on when it comes to these grants from relief of the pandemic, does it account for lost revenue or is this grants for COVID expenses?
I'm going to turn to Susan Cervantes or Steve Duarte. To my knowledge, these are expenses, not revenue related, but I will defer to them. Susan, can you comment, please?
I will defer to Steve.
Is he online?
No.
Let me get unmuted here. The question was whether they can replace revenue or they revenue their program revenue. They can spend anywhere that we can spend block grant funds. We're identifying they're going to COVID, but they're not specifically COVID related funds. Does that answer your question?
I just need a yes or no. Can it be used for lost revenue?
Just a second, Diane, I'm waiting for that to come up on closed caption. No.
Okay. Thank you. So any other questions? Wayman, do you see anything? Any hands raised?
Commissioner Wooten has his hand up.
Go ahead, Commissioner Wooden.
Thank you, Madam Chair. first, thank you for your question. I had the same one. My second question is regarding a little bit more into the micro business classification, and I realize that you mentioned HUD is prescribing rules as we speak. Is there an asset consideration, a current cash in the bank consideration? And if there's not, can there be locally, at least with our application, only because, certainly there's a need. Commissioner Sparks spoke to the urgent need to support small businesses at this moment. But we also, I would want to make sure that these funds, these taxpayer dollars that we're dispersing, get to those who need it the most. And a business is not, the size of a business is not just based on the number of employees. There are a number of smaller outfits of 5 or less employees who, because of their business, probably can exist in a virtual setting and also may not have the same kinds of economic or financial worries that another true micro business that is less capitalized, has less access to resources, has fewer dollars in the bank. And I just want to make sure that we're prioritizing those. Can you speak a little bit to that?
Well, we do want these funds to be able to address those who need the assistance the most. And so we are hoping that we will have the guidelines from HUD to do that. But if not, we do have some flexibility to have local guidelines, and we can look at what everyone is doing, as a collective, and see if we can't match the guidelines that are existing locally also.
Yeah, that's great. The main reason the example I was thinking, and not that I have an issue with this industry, but a law firm could have 5 or fewer attorneys, and much of their work, because courts are also performing just like we are right now, much of their work could be sustained for the long term, and they might not necessarily need the same kind of technical assistance as a small micro business on a main street that can't open its doors because of the crisis, or can't open its doors as easily. And not that I have anything against attorneys, but I want to make sure that we're avoiding a handing out of resources to those who simply don't need it as much as others.
Yes.
Thank you.
Okay, anyone else? Wayman?
No other hands, Madam Chair.
All right, Pam, would you please take a roll call vote on agenda item number 6?
Sure. Commissioner Antor,
Yes.
Breivy,
Yes.
Bukowski. Commissioner Bukowski,
Yes.
Morgan,
Yes.
Sparks,
Yes.
Voorhees,
Yes.
Womack,
Yes.
Wooden,
Yes.
and Chair Jones.
Yes.
And that motion passes.
Okay, that brings us to agenda item number 7, also from Kent County Community Action. Wayman, would you please go over the action request?
Sure. This is a request to the board to approve the Kent County Community Actions funding from HUD authorized by the Coronavirus Aid, Relief, and Economic Security Act to appropriate $1 million in revenue to the Community Development Block Grant Program budget, and to authorize the board chair or county administrator to execute the grant documents related to the funding and approve extension, amendments, and increases to the grant appropriation not to exceed 15% of the original award. The Coronavirus Aid, Relief, and Economic Security Act allocates $1 million in HUD program funds to the Kent County for a special community block grant program. Kent County received this funding since Kent County is a qualified urban county entitlement community with HUD and has received HUD funds for 39 years. This funding will be included in the amended 2019 action plan that is a part of the county's consolidated 2016-2021 plan. These funds will be utilized in Kent County outside the city of Grand Rapids and the city of Wyoming. Both cities are CDBG recipients and the funding cannot cross boundaries. Eligible activities include small business grant to support businesses with COVID-19 related issues such as business stabilization, avoidance of job loss, short-term capital assistance, and retention of low and moderate income employees, technical assistance, increased public services, and assistance and assisting the health department to increase its capacity and availability or targeted health services for infectious disease response. The CDBG COVID-19 grant will reimburse costs of eligible activities incurred for pandemic response with a period of performance starting April 2, 2020 and ending September 30th, 2022. This action item is an activity related to COVID-19.
Thank you, Wayman. Is there a motion to approve?
Voorhees.
Approve.
All right, we'll moved by Breedy and supported by Commissioner Voorhees. We'll now take questions, comments, and discussion. Anything, Wayman?
No, Madam Chair.
Okay, let's have a roll call vote, please, Pam.
Commissioner Antor. Commissioner Antor. Commissioner Antor.
Sorry, yes.
Okay, thanks. Breedy,
Yes.
Bukowski,
Yes.
Morgan,
Yes.
Sparks,
Yes.
Voorhees,
Yes.
Womack,
Yes.
Wooden,
Yes.
and Chair Jones.
Yes.
And that motion passes.
All right, that brings us to agenda item 8. Wayman, would you please read the action request?
Sure. Yes, this is a request to approve the Kent County Community Actions funding from HUD authorized by the Coronavirus Aid Relief and Economic Security Act to appropriate $532,000 in revenue to the 2020-21 Community Development Federal Project Fund for the Emergency Solutions Grant program budget, and to authorize the board chair or county administrator to execute the grant documents related to the funding and approve extensions, amendments, and increases to the grant appropriation not to exceed 15% of the original award. The CARES Act public law allocates $532,000 in HUD program funds to Kent County for a special emergency solutions grant program. Kent County received this funding since Kent County is a qualified urban county entitlement community with HUD and has received this type of funding from HUD for 3 years. This funding will be included in the amended 2019 action plan that is a part of the county's consolidated plan for 2016 through 2021. These funds will be used to prioritize the needs of persons experiencing homelessness or at risk of homelessness in the areas of Kent County outside of the city of Grand Rapids. Both cities are, City of Wyoming is not included in this. This is only outside of the city of Grand Rapids. Eligible activities including tent-based short-term rental assistance payment of last month's rents and partnering with area shelters to pay hotel motel vouchers. The ESG COVID-19 grant will reimburse costs eligible activities incurred for pandemic response with a period of performance starting April 2, 2020 and ending September 30th, 2022. This action item is an activity related to COVID-19.
Okay, is there a motion to approve?
Moved by Bulkowski.
Support by Breedy.
Okay, moved and supported, and we'll take questions, comments, and discussion.
Commissioner Wooden.
Thank
Go
you,
ahead.
Thank you, Madam Chair. I had 2 questions. First,
Are you sure? Because I'm just keeping a quick check.
can't make any promises. I've broken my promises multiple times.
Yeah, I'm not so sure you should limit yourself, in my opinion, Commissioner Wooden. Why don't you just go ahead and start with as many questions as you have? Let's go with number 1.
Thank you, Madam Chair. My first question is a little bit more on the coordination front from my previous questions. Was this plan shared at all with the continuum of care, the city of Grand Rapids, to see how, and did we receive any comments from either of those entities if they were shared? And then my other question, the determination certainly makes sense to put some into homeless prevention and some into the hotel motel vouchers. What determined what calculus was used to determine the dollar amount in each bucket? Was it based on need? Was it based on any kind of estimates on how many people in our area, in Wyoming, in any areas outside of Grand Rapids, are going to need hotel motel voucher versus how many people are going to need short-term rental assistance? Can you speak a little bit more about the calculus? And as I mentioned before, did we share these with our partners in COC or in Grand Rapids, and did we get any feedback or comments on that?
Yes, hi. We did share the plans with the COC, and we did get comments that they, the comment was that they would, there was a motion made at one of the COCs that they would like all of the ESG dollars to go to running the shelters. But because we cannot provide funding for shelter operations, we cannot assist the shelters operations because most of the shelters are located in the city of Grand Rapids, and of course that's where our dollars can't go. And so what we decided to do was to help with the hotel and motel vouchers, because we can help those residents that come from the area of our qualified jurisdictions. So that is how we determined that we could do that. And the calculation was done by putting all of our grants together as a community action and knowing what we would need, you know, with the CDBG funds, the ESG and the CSBG, and trying to establish what would be most important and how we could do that. We talked to 211 regarding what kind of calls that they were receiving, even though there's moratoriums on utility assistance and evictions at this point. They gave us their statistics. We also just completed a community needs assessment where affordable housing was the #1 issue. And we felt like as a community action, our community needs assessment is our guiding principles, our guiding documents, and felt like that was what we really needed to put our funding into.
Thank you. And believe it or not, I don't have any more questions.
All right, that will bring us to Commissioner Womack.
Yes, when it comes to those who are homeless and are looking for that voucher, how extensive is the paperwork that they have to fill out? Is it look more of as an application they have to fill out? And do they need, and if they are currently living with a family member or someone that's putting them out of the house, do they need any third parties, participants in that application for vouchers?
Well, for the application is going to look different for the hotel motel vouchers than it will for the homeless assistance. And currently there are waivers that we can ask HUD for the ESG dollars and the CDBG dollars, and we have done so. But there still are some verifications of the documentation. There's verification of the income and verification of their status as homeless. So some of the things HUD is willing to help us out with so we can get the money out into the community, and some things they still want verified.
How does a person verify that they're homeless if they just show up and say, hey, I'm homeless? How do they verify that?
Well, they can either have a homeless shelter, have verification through that, or let's say they're staying in their car or something, they can self-declare that.
Okay, thank you.
Mm-hmm.
Okay, Commissioner Antor.
Right. Just curious, are the hotel motel vouchers, are they subject to the excise tax?
Currently, with the hotel motel vouchers, there's a subsidy that the hotels and motels that are used through the homeless system that they give us. Now, I don't know if that's taxable or not, but they do subsidize the amount that we pay on a nightly basis.
Okay, thank you.
It's a good question, Commissioner Antor. Do you know that answer in more detail, Wayman?
No, they're not subject to the hotel model. These are direct payments to the clients. And so these are not funds that go to the, they go through the client, so they wouldn't be taxable income.
But when the hotel gets paid, it would trigger the hotel motel tax. Right?
We can get clarity on this, but I don't believe that this is something that is applied against hotel motel tax. We will double check that. We will double check it.
Thank you, Wayman.
You bet.
Thank you, Diane.
Anyone else?
No,
Anything,
no one
Wayman?
else, Madam Chair.
All right, Pam, would you please take a roll call vote on item 8?
Yes. Commissioner Antor,
Yes.
Brevy,
Yes.
Bukowski,
Yes.
Morgan,
Yes.
Sparks,
Yes.
Commissioner Voorhees. Commissioner Voorhees,
I couldn't get that thing to yes, please.
thanks. Commissioner Womack,
Yes.
Commissioner Wooden,
Yes.
and Chair Jones.
Yes.
And that motion passes.
Thank you. That brings us to item number 9 from purchasing. Wayman, are we receiving and filing, or are we doing something else with this? There's always a standing rule discussion on if things, how things are received.
Yeah, this is a receive and file, Madam Chair.
All right. So can you please go over the action item from purchasing to
Yes, this is-
receive and file the emergency purchase report?
You bet. This is a request to the Finance and Fiscal Resources Committee to receive and file the emergency purchasing report. Emergency purchasing report submitted by Purchasing Manager Calvin Brinks as required by the county's purchasing policy. The county's fiscal policy, centralized purchasing emergency urgent purchases 7.8.6 states whenever there exists an apparent threat to the public health, welfare, or safety of the county, its facilities, or its residents, the purchasing manager may award a contract without bids and as soon as practical. After the award of an emergency urgent purchase, the purchasing manager shall file a full written report on circumstances surrounding the purchase with the Finance and Fiscal Resource Committee of the Board of Commissioners. The attached emergency purchase report details the emergency purchases made between March 24, 2020 and May 15, 2020. The bulk of the purchases were for PPE and other COVID-19 supplies. Additional purchases are anticipated to meet the needs of the emergency, and additional reports will be provided to the Finance and Fiscal Resources Committee. The preparation submission of this report is a COVID-19 related item.
Okay, is there a motion to, we are receiving and filing?
Voorhees, yes, to move.
Support by Brevy.
Okay. Any questions, comments, or discussion?
No, Madam Chair.
All right, can we please have a roll call vote on item number 9, Pam?
Yes. Commissioner Antor,
Yes.
Brevy,
Yes.
Bukowski,
Yes.
Morgan,
Yes.
Sparks,
Yes.
Voorhees,
Yes.
Womack,
Yes.
Wooden,
Yes.
and Chair Jones.
Yes.
And that motion passes.
Okay, that brings us to item number 10 from Fiscal Services. This is the financial status report.
Jeff
Wayman?
Dillon, our Fiscal Services Director, is here to present for you the report.
Yeah,
Okay,
good
Jeff.
morning, good morning, Chair Jones, Commissioners, guests, and staff. I'll try to be brief in the essence of time. I know we have another meeting at 10 o'clock for a lot of us, so I'm happy to present the first quarter 2020 financial report. If you note on page 1, the 2019 actual column is pre-audited numbers, so they are subject to change. I just want to point that out. And this is for the general operating fund. So you'll note through the first quarter ending March 31, where the revenues were up 2.8% over the first quarter 2019, and expenses were up 8.2%. Even with these variances, we still expect to meet have excess revenue over expenditures in FY20. If you roll down to page 2, you'll see the detailed report, and I'll go over a few notes on the differences in revenues. Charges for services are up about $600,000, and various line items are up, varying amounts on that. That's not unusual to have differences from the prior year. Interest and rents are down about $330,000, and that's mainly due, I think, to timing of CD interest, things like that. However, with the COVID-19, I expect year-end interest to be down over previous years because interest rates, as you know, have been dropped to near zero. Other revenues down about $400,000, mainly due to timing differences, and then transfers in are off a little bit as well. On the expenditure side, you can see it's up 8.2%. A lot of this increase is in the wages, it's up $800,000, and other payroll items about $700,000 for a total of about $1.5 million up. This is tracking with budget and expected due to the wage increases that were negotiated. Other service charges category increase from 6.8 to 8.1, about 20%. And that's primarily due to timing payments in inmate healthcare, which will resolve itself in the next quarter. And then capital category decreased a little bit. At this point, we're still tracking fund balance policy GASB 54, and we expect to maintain the minimum fund balance of at least 40%. If you roll down to page 4 on the report, it's just the same numbers, but broken out by department. You can see the different categories there. I don't have a whole lot to say about that. You can see the budgeted year-to-date for 19. We do show an expected surplus of about $6.2 million, and our amended budget right now shows the surplus of just over $1.9 million for the year. Rolling down to page 5 of the report, you can see our fund balance position as of, again, preliminary 2019 of just over $80.7 million, up from $74.4 million in 2018. And you can see the different categories. 40% is assigned for cash flow, 41.8, and then economic stabilization, 27.5. So we're meeting our policy limits on our fund balance policy. Things look pretty good for 2019 for that. Rolling down to page 6, you can see our cash balances report. We're up from $44.7 million to $50.4 million, or 68 days of cash reserves. So very good position there as well. The last graph on page 7 shows, I really like this graph. It shows the different buckets basically of fund balance. You can see the yellows unassigned. The light blue is assigned to cash flow. There's a small piece in there for non-spendable, and then the gray is committed to economic stabilization. And this chart really shows, our low point of the year, June, July timeframe before taxes start coming in. But this is one of the reasons why we are required to maintain such a high fund balance for this low point in the year. And you can see cyclically how it comes back up. For 2019's red line, that's how we expect to finish. 2020, you can see the line through March, following similar trends of previous years. To one of the questions earlier, we did on the bond rating calls earlier this year, we made several adjustments to our projected revenues and expenses. And we still expect to see at that point about a $600,000 surplus for 2020, and that's what we represented to the rating agencies. Some of the categories we adjusted include additional overtime pay, supplies, things like that, expenses. However, those should be mainly covered, or 100% covered almost, by the CARES Act and some of the other grants we've received. So on the expense side, I'm not that concerned for 2020, and we obviously can watch our budget for 2021 on the expense side as we go through the budget process. On the revenue side, some of the adjustments we made for this year were to lower our property tax collection rates similar to the the post-recession numbers, the Great Recession in 2008, 2009. So we made some adjustments there. We expect also some of our other categories to be down as well, possibly the real estate transfer tax, although properties are still selling pretty rapidly in the area. I think next year state shared revenue will probably be affected. So as we build the budget for 21, we'll have to take that into account. But we still have great reserves. We're still in a very strong fund balance, and we rely on property taxes as opposed to income taxes. So we have some time to adjust. Fortunately, as compared to some other agencies that are immediately impacted by this. But so we've looked at a lot of things. We're in really good shape right now, and we expect to weather 2020 pretty well. And in 2021, we'll certainly take into effect all of the changes in the state's revenue projections. They're projecting to show several $1 billion deficits over the next several years, which ultimately typically rolls down to local government. So I'm sorry that was so quick, but I know we're short on time, and I'd be happy to take any questions.
All right, we are approaching the 10 o'clock mark. It's 9:53. Are there any quick questions for Jeff? And if we don't get them now, you can also get them to Wayman, who will get them to Jeff. So your questions will get answered. We might have to do it that way, but if you have anything quick, who do we have?
Commissioner Voorhees.
All right, Commissioner Voorhees.
Thank you. Mr. Dodd, thank you for your work. On page 2, under expenditure, the second item of high increase was other services and charges, which was 19.9, pretty near a 20% increase. Was there one or two items in there in particular that made our charges to run 20% higher than previous or budgeted?
I'm sorry, I'm trying to find that line item. Oh, the $8.1 million?
Yes.
Yes.
Yeah, so the other service and charges category, it went from 6.8 to 8.1 million, almost 20%. And the primary reason for that was an increase in the payments for the inmate healthcare system. And that was just a timing issue. So that should resolve itself in the next quarter. So next quarter should be lower. So year to date through June should be close to budget.
All right, Jeff. Thank you. Appreciate it. Thank you, Madam Chair.
Okay, Commissioner Bukowski.
Thank you, Chair. Jeff, you don't seem to have any fear that July tax collections are going to come in at projections and that people aren't going to not make that happen. And then the state of Michigan has a pretty big hole in its 2020 budget, and the fear that they could be trickling that down as we speak.
Yeah, so we do feel taxes are going to come in slower. So what we did in our projections, again, for the bond rating agencies, we lowered our collection rate. Typically it's around 90, we figure about a 96.5% collection rate. We lowered that to match the post-Great Recession rate of 92.5%. So in our 2020 estimate now, we're projecting instead of 104.6 for our budget, about $101 million, or about a $3.3 million decrease in the collection rate and taxes. So we have anticipated that. But with the other adjustments we made, we still feel we're in a pretty good shape. And again, we budgeted to have a surplus of about $2 million. We're now projecting about $600,000. The big wild card, as you just stated, is the state of Michigan. What are they going to do to us? We get about $12.5 million in state revenue sharing. Fortunately, that's it's a general fund allocation approved. It's not reliant per se on state tax collections, so it would take an act of the legislation to cut that mid-year, and it's not a percentage of what they collect. So county revenue sharing is a little different than some of the other cities' revenue sharing. So I do believe it's going to get cut. That's been the history of the state, in the past. Whether they do it yet this fiscal year for them, I think it ends September 30th, is yet to be seen. But again, we're ready to make adjustments if needed.
Okay, Wayman, do you have anything else? Anyone else?
No one else, Madam Chair.
All right. We don't have to do anything from an action standpoint on the report, right, Wayman?
That's correct, Madam Chair. This is just a normal report out that we expect there Fiscal Service Director do every quarter for us.
All right, do we have any commissioner miscellaneous?
No hands up, Madam Chair.
All right, we're gonna go to adjournment. The only comment I will make is come June 2nd, 2020 at 8:30 a.m., it will be to be determined if this will be somehow done in person or Zoom, because we are still waiting on action from the governor and or the courts. So please be aware that it is certainly possible we'll find some way to meet safely in person. If that is what we have to do, we'll take every precaution that is necessary and do the best we can on that end, like everyone else is. So with that, we are adjourned, and the next meeting date will be June 2nd at 8:30.